Health Services Authority is now offering online payment options for patients. Patients of HSA can now pay their bills, including deposits, towards scheduled services online at payments.hsa.ky. The secure, new online payment system accepts debit or credit cards and is in addition to the available payment options of cash, check, and online bank transfer. For quick, easy, and secure payment directly from your phone or computer, visit HSA's new online payment system at payments.hsa.ky.
The Health Services Authority's new pharmacy is now open at the Smith Road Medical Center. The new location features a large, comfortable waiting area and ticketing system to improve the patient experience. All uncollected prescriptions and refill requests previously submitted will now be available for collection at the Smith Road Pharmacy. Request your refills online at hsa.ky via WhatsApp 925-6534 or call 244-2715. For more information about our pharmacy hours, visit hsa.ky.
At the Health Services Authority, we want to keep you informed about the latest developments that impact your health because your health matters to us. Join us each Friday and Saturday from 1 to 2 p.m. as we cover health news, offer advice, and answer your questions on Healthcare Today with HSA.
Welcome back to Healthcare Today with the HSA. I'm your host, Chuck Taylor. Each and every Friday and Saturday, we get together and talk about all things relating to your health. And, it's been, well, let me introduce my guest first with us from HSA, Dr. Chantal Basson. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
So taking a look at HSA and so much different avenues and facets, tell us what you do over at the HSA.
So I'm clinical psychologist at Alex's Place. And Alex's Place is a kind of year and a half old, so relatively new aspect of the HSA. It's an emergency room for young people's mental health. Mm-hmm. So if young people between the ages of 10 and 20 find themselves feeling like they can't cope, like they're having some quite dark thoughts, and many young people are at the moment, they can just walk into Alex's Place and see a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, and you'll also see a nurse. And so I'm part of that team. I'm the clinical psychologist.
Excellent. We talked to the beginning of Alex's Place. I think it's a great initiative for our island to have. We have so many young people here that are having difficulties, but it's kind of a silent struggle. They don't know where or who to turn to or who to talk to. They get a lot of information from social media. There's a lot of influences, but we want to have a positive place for them to thrive, for them to talk to somebody in the know and also understand. Speaking of stressful situations, we've had a couple of stressful years here. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we're talking the world as a whole, but with us being a small community, I tend to feel that we get it double dose because it affects us faster. Yeah. Things that may take months and years for thousands or hundreds of thousands of people to see and say, okay, this is happening in our community. We see it very instantaneously. And from your standpoint of view, financial stress, school stress, pandemic stress, cyberbullying stress, all of these things, talk to us a little bit about that.
So I would absolutely agree with everything you said. Things affect people here in Cayman faster and deeper, I would say. So there's more intensity to how things affect us here on this island. And there was a great quote during the pandemic, which was, everybody's on the same sea, but they may not be in the same ship. And I think no truer quote could be said than for Cayman. Mm-hmm. And I think that is part of the context of the mental health difficulties here, and I'll talk a bit about that. But let's talk about the pandemic for a moment. We always knew, and they always said, they being kind of public health figures, always kind of said that there was going to be a really big mental health and repercussion from the pandemic. And the more I look, the more I kind of see that that's exactly what we're in. It was always hard to know what that was going to be made up of. But I think what I'm seeing, and actually I've spoken to a few young people more explicitly about this recently, what I'm seeing is that there's been a bit of a shutdown in people. Somebody said to me yesterday, I saw a young person, 15-year-old, extraordinarily bright young woman. And she said, people used to go out, they used to party, they used to gather. And now, actually, we've stopped because of the pandemic. We're in our homes more. We're inside the four walls. Not only that, but we're alone in our homes. We're in our own rooms. We're on devices in a way that we never used to be before the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And I think that, coupled with some social media issues, is having a major impact on young people's mental health, on people's mental health in general.
Right.
So I think that's the kind of part of the pandemic issue.
Mm-hmm. This goes back, having gone away to boarding school and being in foreign countries and things like that, people have, and I term the coin, cabin fever.
Yeah.
When you're locked into four walls for a long period of time, it's dark, it's gloomy, the weather's bad. You kind of have these thoughts and you have these things. But even in our society where the sun is out, and we still tend to be shut in.
Yeah.
It's almost a self-contained prison. You don't see a lot of people out walking. You don't see them out socializing.
No.
There's not just a gathering, a mass gathering for no reason except to gather. You don't see that anymore.
No, and actually what I've known about this community is that the ability to gather is exceptional, and the ability to heal from gathering is absolutely exceptional. The kindness and the togetherness that there is, and there can be in Cayman, is unlike anywhere I've actually seen before. I've spent some time in the Middle East, and there is actually some of that there, less so in the UK, and then much more so here. And I feel like the pandemic has squashed that. And I kind of feel like we need a reverse revolutionary pandemic. Okay. We need to reverse the pandemic. We need to come out of our homes and we need to gather again for no reason, like you say. And we have to practice that. We have to get back into the habit, and that takes effort.
Mm-hmm. And folks, we have to understand that what we're seeing now has been a very fast heal. And I say that because we came out of it like, hey, we're doing good, we're doing great, everything is back to normal, we're rocking and rolling, but it wasn't.
No.
And we're starting to see the effects of it. And I say this, and folks, as I talk, we're always about positivity for the community. So when we're talking here, even though it may be some negative connotations, negative things that we're talking and understanding and bringing to your forefront, we want you to see it in a positive light. So with that being said, let's just say we came out of this saying, oh, wow, we're doing great. We're doing fine.
Yeah.
And the older generation tends to respond to things slower. Mm-hmm. And our younger generation hit the wall and said, wait, there's a wall here. I can't get through it.
Yeah.
And we're saying, oh, it'll pass. The door is just to the left. It just keep walking a little further down. It's the light is there. Mm-hmm. But our young folks, our young people just don't see it like that.
No. They're not able. Of course they're not able. We're talking about 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. They are not able to look ahead in that way because they don't have the context in which to do that. When you get kind of past 30, you start to develop this real context in which to put your experiences. And I think what's really important to remember is young people don't have that context. They rely on us, they're grown-ups, for that context, which makes parenting right now probably the most difficult I've ever seen it.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Folks, we're talking to Dr. Basson about the state of mental health with our young folks and how we can be a sounding board in moving forward in a right direction for our community. And with that being said, I'd like to just ask you this. With all the things just going on, how can us as the older generation kind of integrate with that young idea to help them see a more positive future, that this is something that, because my mom is 86 years old, and I tell her, I said, man, we're going through this, and she's like, oh, well, this and this has happened. So there's a historical reference that we can use to see how much better things can get.
Yeah.
But I don't think our young folks are getting that information. They're not seeing that tomorrow is another day. You know, the bills that you have, the stress that you have right now is not life ending, but they seem to be doing that on their own.
Yeah. Right.
So how from a clinical point of view, how can we start adjusting our rhetoric or our actions to move forward?
Okay, that's a massive question.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm so glad you asked it.
It's almost a loaded question.
Yeah. So there are a number of things we can do, both kind of practically and then emotionally for young people. The first thing that I would urge everyone to do is come out of your rooms, okay, gather together in your own homes and in your communities. So come out and spend a good hour and a half together in your social space in your home each evening. Eat together. Don't go on your own devices. So that means if you can be watching TV, you can watch a movie, but you're doing it together. That's still a collective experience.
Right.
So yeah, first thing, come out of your homes. Second thing, and I'm going to apologise to all the young people I know and don't know when I say this, is limit time on devices like iPads and phones, and particularly limit the mindless scrolling. I don't mean the young person is mindless. I mean what they're watching is mindless.
Right.
Okay.
No context, no connotation.
Yeah.
Just 30 seconds and you're clicking to the next thing.
That's right. And what that's doing is that they're made as addictive as possible, those platforms. And while we're watching them, our norepinephrine, our adrenaline is building up in our system. And it's very, very hard to come off. And then when we do, we can often have meltdowns. And so parents are saying, well, I see this. And I'm like, yeah, because of the addictive nature of this. And also they're accessing information, who knows where by who knows who, with no qualifications to say what they're saying whatsoever, with their own opinion.
I always say, and not throwing shade on any particular one, but, I say, Dr. Google, who is that?
That's right. Exactly. Who is Dr. Google?
You don't know the truthfulness. You don't know the science behind it. You don't know who is putting this there. It's a web page that anybody could have built, and just to find you and keep you in, the latest trend is to eat dirt.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
and you're like, wow. Okay. It can cure. And people actually reach out to that rather than seeking professional help.
That's right. So my blanket rule is for kids age 11, 12 and over, 1 hour of social media video scrolling. That's different to anything educational, and it's also different to gaming with your friends online. Gaming with your friends online is a social activity, so you may provide different time frames for that, and I absolutely leave that up to parents.
Right.
Mindless scrolling, 1 hour. For 11 and under, half an hour at a time, just because of the how their brain is working. Okay, so you might do half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, and that's plenty. Same for young people. At the weekends, it might be slightly more if you're in the house all day. However, not too much more. Okay, so here we go. So far, we've got come out of your rooms and gather, and we've got limit social media. The next one, which is like super hard, okay, is to listen. We tend to talk to our young people. Okay, we tend to talk to them about how we understand the experience to help them. What we don't often do then is really listen. And I'm talking about listening to understand. Whether we agree with them or not, we can still listen to understand. And that's listening without thinking about any answer. It's just listening. And it's saying, tell me more. Help me to understand that. Okay, until you as a parent or you as somebody in this community understands their perspective. Because only then can you walk forwards with them. And that's what they need. They need to feel a psychological arm around their shoulder from us. Okay. And listening to understand is a really good way of doing that. And validating and empathizing. None of those mean we're agreeing and condoning. We may totally disagree with what a young person is saying to us, but we can still listen, understand, have empathy, and validate. And then we find a way to talk about the different perspectives.
Very, very true. Over the course of time, one of the And folks, I use myself as an example, so bear with me. One of the things that I found that works for me and my kids is I'll have a movie night. And my movie night, each one of them picks a movie. And we put it in a hat and we pull it out, and then we go from that. And it'll be something, I try to be old school. My son tries to be action, my daughter with this romance. So you kind of have an idea, but the thing about it is we talk about the movie, what's going on in the movie, where it was made, why it was made. For me, I've been in advertisement, so I'm like, hey, you see that bottle there? That's what they call product placement.
Yeah.
And they got like $200,000 for that. And they're like, really? And they're like, oh my gosh, I've been noticing that. And I said, that's why you like to drink that, or that's why you like to eat that, because you see. So I try to find, for me, what works is I kind of stay in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And try to bring them in, and then I'm quiet and they'll talk to me about it. Oh, well, why did this happen? Or, what did you like about that? Mm-hmm. And that allows me to express myself.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay. And so for us, that's the kind of camaraderie that we have. Lovely. So it's not just the dad moment or me preaching to them, oh, you shouldn't have this, or you shouldn't be smoking that, or, it's a real idea. It may not work for somebody else, but I've watched it work for other people, and I've kind of developed it for myself.
How old are your kids, Chuck?
My oldest one is 30. My youngest one is 10, and my in between is 17.
Fabulous.
So we have an eclectic mixture, but the good thing is, I'm like, okay, well, if you don't want to talk to me about something, talk to your brother, talk to your sister about it. At least have a sounding board within the house.
Absolutely.
And I find that it helps my mental state.
Yeah.
Because I would be petrified about where they're at or what they're doing, but because I know the scenarios that I've put them through, I kind of have a better understanding of how they may react to certain things.
Right.
And I'm just tossing that out there from a Caymanian dad's point of view.
I love that.
But, you have to find out what works for you. And it may be a trial and error, but the good thing about it is you got to keep at it.
I agree.
You are the force for them. If they see you melting down, they're going to melt down too.
Right.
So, we try to keep that. We're going to take our first break. We're talking today with Healthcare Today with the HSA, talking to Dr. Basson about the psychological effects of just Cayman's mental state in general, especially dealing with our young kids. We'll be right back.
Health Services Authority is now offering online payment options for patients. Patients of HSA can now pay their bills, including deposits, towards scheduled services online at payments.hsa.ky. The secure, new online payment system accepts debit or credit cards and is in addition to the available payment options of cash, check, and online bank transfer. For quick, easy, and secure payment directly from your phone or computer, visit HSA's new online payment system at payments.hsa.ky.
When you have a sports or fitness-related injury, trust the expertise of the HSA Sports and Exercise Medicine Clinic to get you back in the game. Our internationally trained and certified physicians specialize in sports traumatology, sports medicine, pain management, and orthopedic surgery. For treatment of common injuries such as tendonitis, arthritis, tennis elbow, rotator cuff, or knee tears, schedule a consultation with the Sports and Exercise Medicine Clinic at Smith Road Medical Center by calling 949-8600 or visit hsa.ky for more information.
The Health Services Authority's new pharmacy is now open at the Smith Road Medical Center. The new location features a large, comfortable waiting area and ticketing system to improve the patient experience. All uncollected prescriptions and refill requests previously submitted will now be available for collection at the Smith Road Pharmacy. Request your refills online at hsa.ky via WhatsApp 925-6534 or call 244-2715. For more information about our pharmacy hours, visit hsa.ky.
HSA's cardiology clinic is now located at Smith Road Medical Center. Our cardiology team provides expert care and treatment for heart conditions such as coronary artery disease, heart failure, arrhythmias, hypertension, congenital heart diseases, among others. The new location offers state-of-the-art cardiac diagnostic testing, including echocardiograms, ECGs, and stress tests. To contact, call 949-8600. At HSA, your heart matters to us.
Now back to Healthcare Today with HSA and our host, Chuck Taylor.
Welcome back to Healthcare Today with the HSA. I'm your host, Chuck Taylor. Each and every Friday and Saturday at 1 p.m. until 2, we get together and talk about all things related to your health. We do the live one on Friday. We rebroadcast it on Saturday. So please tune in. And today we're talking about Cayman's mental status. I know it's almost a loaded question. It's a big idea. We are talking about years of fighting and struggling towards finding a better place and a better medium, not just for our older generation, but also our younger generation. And I have with us Dr. Chantal Basson, psychologist over at the HSA. And we were just having a little off conversation about what we try to do to engage with our younger kids, our teens and our youth.
Yeah. I love the fact that you were talking about your film night, and we do exactly the same in our house. And I guess I've always kind of wondered, especially when I'm giving advice, is, how does this work for older kids? And you've just said you've got a 30-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 17-year-old, and it works perfectly for you.
Yes.
Mine are 9 and 5, and it works really well for us. What we're bringing psychologically, so we're all having fun, right? And then we're thinking, well, how is fun psychological? Well, what we're doing there is within our families, within our units, we're bringing acceptance, belonging, and connection. When we watch a film together and we talk about it and we agree on the themes, where we actually enter into maybe a debate or something that kind of brings us together, we are connecting. That's lighting up millions and millions of synapses in our brain. And that's doing it for all of us. That's bringing us connection. And with connection comes belonging and acceptance. Those are the cornerstones of our mental health. So we might be thinking we're just having a film night, right? We do film and pizza. We might just be thinking we're just having a film and pizza night, but we're not. We are bringing acceptance, belonging, and connection to our family.
And that's really great. I wanted to say and ask you about, because Cayman is such an eclectic place, a very unique place. What are some of the unique physiosocial stressors that we see locally here in the Cayman Islands?
I'm really glad you asked that, because they're huge. When we think about mental health, we often think about it being an internal issue within an individual person. And actually, the economic and political context sets the stage for a country's mental health. And I think that's the part that's often less understood. So the stresses here that are impacting on mental health are things like food poverty, bill prices, the amount of issues there are in terms of housing and affordable housing for people, climate change problems, the problems with wages. So we've seen a massive increase in food prices over the last, since I've been here 2.5 years, and my food bill each week for a family of 4 it's probably doubled, I'm going to say, in the last 2.5 years. And there are people on a minimum wage of $6 per hour, and they're shopping in the same places that I am.
Right.
And I'm finding it hard to feed a family of 4. So I'm imagining how on earth is somebody managing to feed a family on the minimum wage, and they're often not. So when we think about mental health, we've got to think about these kind of issues, and that then comes into more of a governmental aspect of policy making and of regulation, of understanding that weekly experience of shopping or daily experience is having an impact on people's mental health. What we're looking at is, in the people who are doing the shopping, in the grown people, in adults, we're looking at the effect of hardship on mental health. And hardship creates a sense of hopelessness and depression. which can be a lifelong then chronic issue and creates lots of bills for insurance companies, lots of issues in different private practices or at the HSA. What we're seeing in the young people is much more far-reaching. Instead of talking about current hopelessness, we are talking about hope. Hope, along with acceptance, belonging and connection, is one of the cornerstones of our mental health. We need to have hope for our future. When we're 13, 14, 15, 16, we're spending a lot of time thinking, what is my future going to be like? What am I going to do? And if our parents are struggling, we're worrying about that. We're worrying, how am I going to make my way in this world? How am I going to manage? Am I going to go get through school? And there's huge problems with mental health in schools at the moment. How am I going to get through school? And how am I going to get a job? How am I going to ever afford to live on this island? And if I can't live on this island, can I get off it? And often the answer is no, I cannot. I can't see a way of ever doing that. You can see then how that would lead to hopelessness.
It becomes a spiral.
That's right.
And it's pulling our younger generation down
massively, with anxiety around the future and depression about their current state. When we have anxiety, depression and hopelessness, then we start to move into the realm of suicidal ideation. Okay. Folks, if you have got kids in the room at the moment who are under the age of 15, or 14, I see a lot of 14-year-olds, I would just kind of think about what they're listening to right now, okay, and whether they should be listening to this conversation, and you can then lead this into a conversation at home. But it's really important for us to think about the status of young people at the moment. I've seen about 115 young people between the ages of 8 and 20, most of whom are 14, 15, who have had a huge amount of suicidal ideation this year. And it's because of these issues. It's because they can't see their way forward.
External factors making them think dark inwardly.
That's right. And then, if I may just add a couple of things onto that we've got then 3 issues. We've got like exam stress. So that's the kind of thing that pushes you over the edge when you're feeling like this. So that comes along. We've definitely seen that this year. We've also got this context at the moment of young people feeling like their parents don't and won't understand them. I know in many, many cases that is not true. That given the chance, their parents will absolutely understand them. But young people are often feeling that they won't be understood, and so they can't talk to their parents. Therefore, this is why parenting is so hard right now. What a parent needs to do is show them that they will understand. And you do that by having conversations in the house. That's why gathering's important. You talk about the things that are talkable about in the house. Oh, you never guess what I heard today. I heard that somebody was really struggling. Have you known that? Have you ever felt like that? Right. You're saying it's okay to talk about this.
Right. You start the conversation because they may not.
Exactly. So we've got this. People don't feel their parents are going to understand. We've got extra stresses at school, and then we've got social media. And we've already talked about that. We've already talked about the need to regulate that in the home. And actually, I would argue we probably need to think about that kind of island-wide from a more regulatory perspective.
Right. I'll just toss this in there. Being in the industry that I've been in for numerous years, and for any parent who's listening, what I do for my personal self is I tell my kids, what you see on that screen or how you see that person living, that is not factual. And there's a ton of places where you can show them where they're taking pictures in an airplane. I've shown my kids where a guy built a set in LA of a interior of a jetliner, and social media icons go and sit down there and say, oh, I'm flying out, and they're taking pictures and all this stuff. And I says, he's making money off of the idea that these people have a lifestyle that they don't. And you're buying into it, which allows for views and allows for this. And so when you start digging into the idea of what's behind it, the kids will understand.
Yeah.
You know, they're very tech savvy. You know, they're very swift to see what is there, but it's very hard for them to tell the difference between reality and what I call prop TV.
Right.
You know, and for us, for my generation, for anyone older than the age of 30, you remember seeing, you saw like Gilligan's Islands and things, and you were like, oh man, they filmed it on that was filmed in a backyard. You know, the Titanic scene was filmed in a 20-foot water container. You know, so once you start digging in and you start showing our young people that lifestyle isn't reality. What we're doing here now is us communicating, us talking, us figuring out a way how to eat better, figuring out a way how to get around, how to socialize. Those are things that I think our young people need.
Yeah.
And the only way they're getting it is through adults, or they'll find out through their peers, which probably is not always the best and accurate, because their peers are also seeing it from their point of view. So you're having almost a circle feeding a circle feeding
That's
a
right.
circle,
rather
than someone interjecting a new idea into
Exactly.
it. So just tossing that out there, Doc, let me just ask you, how important is the community and family support when it comes to maintaining it? And how can we foster a better place here locally on island?
That's a really great question. So it is of the utmost importance. It is the most important thing, is to have family and community support. Okay, people live in fabulous family groups here in a way that taught me a lot when I moved here. And we need to be able to use those, but use them with kindness and understanding. Okay, so as I said before, we often, as the grown people, we want to talk to our young people and tell them our perspective and tell them about their experience. And so then what we lose a little bit of is the listening aspect. And so if we can listen and talk, or listen first and empathise and validate and then talk, then we're going to be doing a really good job with young people. If we can understand the meltdowns, especially of our young ones, then that's really helpful. But get your kids out. Get them out of their rooms and then get out of the house. This 15-year-old I saw yesterday, this is exactly what we were talking about. And she gave me permission to talk about her information yesterday without disclosing her identity. I said, I'm doing this tomorrow with Chuck Berry. Can I talk about you? And she said, yes, you can. So what I said to her is, okay, you're all in your rooms. Will you come out of your room? And she said, yes. And so I sent a message to her mum and I said, will you come out of your room in the evening? She said, yes, I will. So I said, right, between the hours of 6:45 and 9 p.m, you're out of your rooms. You're not allowed to go into your rooms onto a device or into your rooms alone. Okay. You are together. You're eating together. You're spending time together. Okay. And then she stopped going out, this girl. She's like, I feel too anxious. I was like, right, well, actually, you know what? We're just going to have to do it. So I gave her a challenge. I said, you've got to say yes to everything your mum asks you to do this next week. Be it going to the cinema, be it going to the beach, whatever it is, you have to say yes. And then I gave her a rating scale to rate how she was feeling, how anxious she was before and after. She's totally into it. She's like, yes, I'm going to do it. And then we talked about the pandemic. I said, when did you stop doing this? She was like, in the pandemic, and I never got back to doing it. And that's what really inspired me to speak with you about it today. Okay. Because I think that's exactly what's happened. And so her and her mum and her little brother, and now they're coming out of their rooms every night, they're eating together, and they're going out this weekend, and they're going out together. It doesn't have to cost anything. Okay, maybe the petrol, maybe the bus fare. Okay, right. But you can go to the beach and it's free. And that's what we do. Yeah. We don't have loads of money in our family to go out and do loads of stuff. We go out to the beach. It's beautiful. It's free.
Get out.
Yeah, get out.
Pick up beach. We got literally hundreds of them on the island.
Oh wow, yeah. That's right. And or if you don't want to go to the beach, you can go to Cayman Bay. Okay, or you can go out to Pedro St James. It's so beautiful to sit on that grassy area in Pedro's and look out at that sea. Exactly. That is food for the soul.
Very, very true. You brought up something, and I kind of want to allude to it. Folks, once again, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Dr. Basson about the state of health and health management, because I don't want to make it sound that it's a negative thing here, but we do have to address it and find positive solutions towards it. One of the things I think that over the years we've seen, and this is just globally, increase in behavior of our younger folks. Always been a concern. You know, I don't want to say disrespectful, but it has gotten to the point where it's thought-provoking and very concerning for someone who doesn't know the reasons why it's happening.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
I'm really glad you brought that up, and it's something I'm hearing an awful lot from parents, is that their young person is being disrespectful to them in a way they would never have been to their parents. And ultimately, that is the generational challenge that as parents we always have, is that our children are always going to be then another step ahead of us where we were. And actually what I'm seeing in this generation is they are not just another step ahead. Because of social media, and probably because of the pandemic, and because of the world stresses and how small the world is now really, we're seeing them 2 or 3 generations ahead. That's making the parenting context that much harder. And I'm really going to hammer that home, how difficult this is, because I don't ever want parents to think that I'm telling them what to do without understanding, or giving them advice about potentially what to do without understanding how hard it is for them.
Well, you yourself are a parent.
There you go, I am. And it's the thing that will bring me to my knees faster than anything else. Okay, faster than anything else. And I get it wrong and I catch myself and I think, oh, got to do better than that.
Right.
However, I think because here we've got this really unusual, unique context. We have an island made up of a multitude of cultures. When we think about the Caribbean culture, we think about a more authoritarian culture, which is essentially a group of parents who have grown up being very obedient to their parents, being kind of the good child.
Right.
Okay. Not causing any problems. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Okay.
As we say, the respectful side of it.
That's right.
Yes. We love you because you're respectful. Right.
Yeah, that's right. And it's very easy to love a child who's respectful. Now, because of those stresses, because of social media, because of the context we have here, kids who normally wouldn't have maybe been exposed to the more expat kind of context have absolutely been exposed to that, and the us and them aspect, which I think is huge here, and it's created lots and lots of issues in local communities.
Right.
What I'm seeing is, though, that there is more disrespect, probably because of that, but also I think that also comes from a place of young people feeling that they're not as understood as they would like to be. And that I think also comes from our tendency as parents to talk to our children rather than listen to them. So when we're dealing with disrespectful behaviour, we kind of have to swallow our immediate response, which is to tell our child off. Is to say, how dare you? How dare you speak to me like that? Do never speak to me like that. Go to your room.
Anger.
Anger.
Right.
Okay. However, if we can swallow it for a moment and listen to the message, rather than listen to the tone, listen to the message. Be curious. What is my kid attempting to say to me? What are they trying to get across in a not very helpful way right now? Okay, there's no bones about that. This is not a helpful way that they're working with, okay, those kids. But we can still listen to it. And if we struggle, we can ask a question. Try and help me to understand. I'm struggling with your tone right now, but I'm trying to understand. Try and help me to understand, because I want to.
There's a conversation to be met there.
And if we can do that, our children's tone's going to come right down, okay? They're going to calm because we're being calm, we're being curious, okay? If it's not the time, come back, say, let's come back to this. Let's take a break and come back, okay? But if we can understand in those trickier moments, we are absolutely winning at parenting, okay? And it takes practice, and we do not get it right every time, and you cannot get it right every time. I always work with an 80-20 rule. 20% of the time we can get it wrong, as long as 80% of the time we're getting it somewhere in the right ballpark.
Right.
Okay? There's no strict right and wrong here. It's just, we're talking ballparks.
Right.
Okay.
I think, for the majority of the West Indian culture, and mind you, folks, I'm talking generalization here. Kids now are automatically 20 and 30 years old.
Right.
Their information that they're getting, that they bring to you now, is probably what you would have gotten when you were 20 and 30 years old. The visual stimulation, the connotation of thoughts, and also globally. You see them knowing more about the world and how the world works than you ever did at that particular age. So we tend to, at least the culture tends to think of them as still children. Yes, they are children, but they are operating on a young adult level, mentally, thoughtfully, but their comprehension is still on a child level. Now,
and their brain.
Would I be correct in saying that, Doctor?
You would. So during our teenage years, our kind of prefrontal cortex is developing. And so that's why you see teenagers having meltdowns and you don't see a 30-year-old having the same kind of meltdown. It's because our brain is still developing and all the hormones we have just pumping around our system in our early teenage through to our mid-teenage years into our late teenage years are having a huge impact. So whilst you're absolutely right, we've got young people who have the information of a 20 and 30-year-old, and so we might expect them to kind of behave a little bit like that. We cannot, because of this prefrontal cortex and the brain development.
Exactly. And that's something, and folks, it's from a scientific thought. Our parents didn't have the access to that great amount of information. I remember growing up, if you had the Encyclopedia Britannica in your home, that was your guide to the world.
Well, wasn't that the truth?
That literally had everything that they knew. They bought it so you would know, and that was a limitation of it. You know, a library pass was almost a forthright thing for you to say, oh, look, I got a library pass. Now I can go and check out books and all the books that people find are online. They rarely go into libraries and these types of places, because all of the information that they're looking for is at a click of a button.
Yeah.
Which hence what they look for. Most people tend not to look for, I call it information to uplift.
Yeah.
They usually find information that puts them on a side track.
Right.
They'll be open to questionable moral things. On top of that, people they see thriving on TV and in social media doing these questionable activities. And even though they may not say, oh, how are they making money doing this, or it still affects them because they see this 50, 60 images of this a day. It's going to have an effect on them.
Yeah.
And most times it's not on a positive realm. So you have to combat that. But how can you do that if you're, and I'm going to ask you, Doc, education institutes supporting behavior and things like that, how can they kind of deal with positive information that trickles out of the school into the home?
I think it really has to be a very conscious effort to bring that positivity. Joy and enjoyment and positivity are very, very important in terms of the hopefulness that we hold and what helps us get through tough times. And so I think schools can absolutely bring messages of hope and positivity and joy. That might be in kind of the stories of past students. It might be in global news. Climate change is a huge issue right now among young people's anxieties.
Right.
And we might bring understanding about the different movements that are kind of being played out globally to help combat climate change. We often talk about the things that aren't being done and the problems, and I certainly was one of those people. I used to have quite a lot of climate anxiety before I started looking into what is actually being done.
Right.
And that might be things like looking at the Earthshot Prize winners and the people who entered the Earthshot Prize. So the Earthshot Prize is is a global initiative to award $1 million to people who have a business helping climate change. They have to win it. They have to compete against other businesses, but it's trying to solve the world's climate change problems in, I think it's 5 key areas. And it's fantastic in terms of bringing hope. That certainly helped me. And then we can talk about actually what can we do?
Right.
So I don't eat meat. And that is really important from my climate change impact. I try not to use plastic as much as possible. But then also I drive an electric car.
Physically and emotionally doing something towards betterment of things that matter to you because they matter to the future.
Yeah.
And I think that, we live in a hurricane alley, if there was, a term or a coin for it. So we are aware of what happens during climate change.
Yeah.
But how do we slow it down? How do we stop it? Recycling is something that we can do that takes very little effort, but you need to start doing it. You need to be aware of it. So have that conversation with your child. Yeah. Say, hey, do you recycle at school? How can we recycle at home? These little things start conversations that lead to other bigger conversations, because now your child trusts you to say, okay, you know what, my mom and dad is concerned about this, the use of styrofoam, the use of plastic, bottles, cans, these types of things. And I guarantee you that if you start with these small steps that you can manage, when a bigger thing comes in, they'll be more ample to talk to you to help with the mental state that they're feeling, the anxiety that they're feeling. Education, where you got to get good grades, So how do we help you get good grades? What do I need to do to help you do better or see something differently or feel more in tune to go take that exam that you're having so much anxiety about? Yeah. And these are real life situations and scenarios that I think we need to have with our young kids.
Do you know what? I couldn't have said it better myself, honestly. I think making sure that we're having the smaller conversations so our kids know they can have the bigger conversations. And if you can, bring up the taboo topics in your house. Bring up things about child development and adolescent development. Talk about puberty. Talk about body changes. Bring it up, because children often either will ask the question and then feel like they can't ask again, or feel too awkward to ask in the first place.
Yeah, or what is sex?
Exactly.
These types of things that may have been taboo to us when we were growing up. Sex education was a doll. Now sex education is the internet, and you have 3 strokes of a key and you can find out everything about something.
Yeah.
But is it the right thing?
That's it.
Is it conducive to that age? Is it conducive to so you have to really kind of think of scenarios and put yourself, say, okay, how can I make this better for my young adolescent growing up, my young 9-year-old, and sometimes you may have to bite the bullet and say, okay, maybe I need to get a little savvy on the information myself.
Yeah.
There's classes, there's things that you can do to help yourself to do that.
You're so right. So it's like giving a child a biology lesson almost. You don't have to bring all of the emotion into these topics, all of the kind of human experience in order to talk about it. And I think that's often what stops us from talking about it as adults. So my kids are 9 and 5, as I said, and we've already started having these conversations. And it really is just biology. That's what we are talking about. And I talk about it in a very perfunctory, biological way. Okay. Whenever they ask questions, I will answer that question from a biological perspective. And I won't give any more information than they've asked for. And that's kind of the golden rule on these topics. Answer the question in the best way that you can, truthfully.
Right.
And then if they don't ask another question, that's it. That's done.
Right.
Okay, and then wait.
Leave it at that point.
Yeah.
And then wait for the next one.
That's right. Same for talking about death, talking about sex, talking about, I don't know, however many tricky taboo topics there are for us to talk about. That's the general golden rule.
I'll tell you one of the things that I realized long ago was the world was becoming a very tech place. So my goal was once a month to try to find something tech related that appealed to me and my kids, something that I could master or something, WhatsApp came along and everybody had it. So, you know, that's old school. So it's like, okay, you know, what apps do? You know, how they communicate on a different level than us. And they have networks. And I will tell you, each one of your child has a group of friends that communicate to them when you're not around.
Yeah.
So how do you infiltrate that without being intrusive, but still giving them the respect and understanding, but then at the same time say, hey, you know, if something's going on, you know, I'm always here to talk to.
Yeah.
You may not feel it, but I'm here. And they operate on sometimes a totally different level. Like I'll tell you, I had a talk with my internet providers, like, listen here, I need to know what my kids are doing when I'm not there. And they said, okay, well, here's an app. This is an app, and I can lock down, and I can check, and I know certain hours I don't want them on the tablet, so they can't get on the internet.
Amazing.
My house is locked down at certain times of the day, unless you're an adult that, you know, needs to be in communication with someone. Hey, they can't get on, and they're like, yep, Dad locked it. And I'm like, yep. And they're like, oh, okay. How long we got? And I said, you got a book to read. Tell me when you're done. Or you got 10 pages or whatever. But the conversation is there because I had to be tech savvy because my kids were outthinking me.
That's right. And that is essentially the problem of our current age. We grow up without the internet. We grew up without phones. And suddenly here we are trying to parent a generation of young people who know more about it than we do. And we don't know that experience. We don't know what it's like growing up with those screens. I'm probably showing my age now. But I
Both
think,
of us.
yeah, right. But that's what it makes. That's why it's so much harder. And I think that's absolutely perfect advice, to get an app that helps. The thing, my daughter, my eldest daughter, says to me, Mummy, when can I get a phone? And I said, look, let's be really clear about this. You won't have your own phone until you can afford to buy one. But you will have access to a phone when you get older. I said, I don't know what age that will be yet, because we need to see when you need one.
Right.
It will be about need. However, it's my job to protect you when you do have a phone. It's my job to protect you and what information that you are exposed to. So we will always go through that together.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but we'll do it together. It's collaborative. And she's like, oh, okay, Mum. So we're having these conversations already. And so I would encourage parents, if your child's already got their phone, it might feel really difficult to backtrack. However, if you're thinking about getting your child a phone, you might be really clear with them, look, this it's great for you to have this, but this is access to a phone, it's not yours.
It's emergency related. It comes with a certain responsibility. Like I told my kids, I said, the responsibility is your phone. And we have a you know, and I tell my business, so we have a money system. When you do your chores, you get so much money on your phone that you can get to top up a certain amount. And when you don't do certain things, it's not there.
Right.
And if you get caught doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, or you're doing things online that you're not supposed to be looking at or whatever, and like my son, he came to me, he said, Dad, something popped up on my phone. I didn't look at it, but here, I don't know how to get it off. And I said to him, I said, I appreciate that. And he said, yeah, because the site that they said, and he told me exactly what happened. But then I realized that the internet is baiting them.
Yep.
They'll go to educational sites, and it'll say, oh, you know, it'll give them another link, and the link has something that's obscure.
Yeah, that's right.
So you know, and it was literally a woman in a swimsuit. But he was 10, and he was like, no, this is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Dad, what's going on here? And so I blocked the site on my Home Pass, which is Home Pass is the network that does it. So anyone out there, it's called Home Pass is the app, and it literally can set parameters for times of you logging on, logging off, and it can set for specific device names. So all my children have their device names, their iPad, their computers, and it lets you know when they're on, how long they're on for. And at 9:30 on a school night, the house is dark.
Right.
They can look all they want, but they can't get online. So they know these things. And I tell them, I said, this exists for your protection. I need you to get 8 hours of sleep. So 8 hours of sleep is this. Why do I need 8 hours of sleep? I said, because when you're up on the weekends, you can't get up in the morning.
Right.
So there's a reason why we do things. The trick is trying to explain it in a way that they get it.
Yeah. And that connects you.
Right. And they'll explain you things you have to reach to figure out what they're talking about.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I felt a bit like that with Roblox.
Yeah. Oh man. Trust me. That is. I got a T-shirt with that. I have literally learned, and for the folks out there who don't know what Roblox is, and for all the folks and kids that do know, there's a movie coming out about it. So be prepared for that in 2025. Doctor, thank you so much for talking with us. In wrapping up, if someone's out there kind of in that valley of decision, kind of today I'm good, yesterday I wasn't so good, tomorrow I don't know what to expect, what would you reach out and tell them, young folks that's tuned in right now?
So for young folks, I would say trust your parent to be the person you need them to be. If you're worried about talking to them, say that to them. Say, I want to talk to you about something, but I'm worried about it. I'm worried that you might be cross with me. I worry that you might shout at me, or I'm worried that you won't listen to me. And I wondered, can I ask you just to sit and listen to me for a minute while I say this without talking? And can we try and figure it out? You know, you kind of, if you need to tell your parent a little bit about what you need from them in that moment, don't be afraid to do it. But do it kindly, do it respectfully. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is don't just tell your friends. Your friends are awesome. Your golden circle, like the people who you tell everything to, are absolutely what you need, especially as a teenager. But don't let them be the only people. Find a trusted adult. It's the adults who can help with action, whereas a young person your age often can't. Okay, they will help you feel a bit better. They'll be your confidant. You might tell them more than you'll tell an adult, but don't just let it be them. Okay. The last thing is, if you need to reach out, absolutely reach out. We've got a kids helpline now, kidshelpline.ky. We've also got the adult helpline. You can go on to kidshelpline.ky, or you can Google them, adult helpline Cayman. That will come up for you, okay? If you're between the ages of 10 and 20 and you're really struggling, you can walk into Alex's place Monday to Friday, 10 till 6. We are there. Okay, you'll be seen by a nurse who will triage, who will ask you some questions, and then the likelihood is you'll be seen by either myself or the psychiatrist, Dr. Holder. If you're an adult and you're struggling, please go and see your GP and get a referral. Or if it's life-threatening, walk into the ER.
Doc, thank you so much for talking with us. We're all about bettering our island, especially the mental state of it, because that is literally the silent struggle here on island, and no one should ever suffer in silence. We're here for you. Please reach out, as she said. Doctor, thank you so much for stopping by here.
Chuck, thanks so much for having me.
Keep it right here. This is Healthcare Today with the HSA. Each and every Friday and Saturday we get together and talk about all things related to your health. Be listening as we do the rebroadcast on Saturdays at 1 p.m. And we'll see you, and take care, Cayman.